Thanks very much indeed. So just to sum up, if you've just joined us, 2 police officers in Leicester Square have been stabbed. They are both still alive. One is injured badly, apparently. We'll bring you up to date with any more news on that. Just in case you don't know London very well, Leicester Square itself isn't really anywhere near the queuing route at all for people wanting to queue.
No, it's on the other side of the river.
It's on the other side, and it's actually nowhere near anything to do with the route of the proposed funeral on Monday. But it is still very central London, and as Mark there said, it's one of those horrible reminders. Maybe it's nothing at all to do with what's going on at the moment, that London has got a knife crime problem.
It has, but as Mark pointed out, the suspect is in custody now, in hospital himself, after being tasered. But the suspect has been taken into custody, so hopefully adds a level of reassurance. But actually, Ella, I mean, I know this is not going to be in the papers till later on, but I mean, it's hugely worrying when things like this happen, when the capital is so full and going to get busier.
Well, one of the things actually that I noticed, sort of in comparison with even the Platinum Jubilee or previous big events, is that the discussion about security or terror threats has been more muted than it has previously. And I don't mean that the work hasn't been done necessarily behind the scenes, but actually there's been a sort of quite positive focus on not trying to put people off coming to the capital, and actually saying that this coming together is very important. There's been an embracing of crowds. There's not been that kind of there's not been that distancing effect, and I think that's something that even when you have instances like this, and as you say, we don't know that it has anything to do with what's happening this week, but it could just be a kind of a freak event. But that kind of the balance between preparing for security and also not trying to put people up, and actually having a level of defiance and saying that things do still need to carry on and things are important. I think they've struck that balance quite well this week.
Yeah.
One can only hope. Yes, absolutely.
I think they have.
Can we talk about the Queen's funeral and who is going to be in on it? We're actually learning more and more and more, aren't we?
Yeah, so obviously it takes place on Monday, and NHS staff, doctors and nurses, are to join the procession route. A group of doctors and nurses will walk in front of the Queen's coffin, and they'll be alongside members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, officers from the Police Service of Northern Ireland, and members of the Armed Forces, and of course Prince Charles and the 3 other children of Her late Majesty.
And this was something they're hinting at that the Queen wanted. She wanted the National Health Service represented.
Yes, and indeed also allowed to attend her funeral are people who have the Victoria or George Cross, and of course the NHS was a recipient following the pandemic, so clearly the NHS meant a great deal to her that she made that decision, and I think this is sort of really fitting of the way she reigned. You know, it's a reflection on the people who have a sense of duty in this country, which is what, when the monarchy works, it exercises itself. And so I think it's fitting, and I think a lot of people will welcome the fact that it's not just the sort of slightly distant elite that are naturally the centre of a royal occasion like this, but it's also the people that go out and work incredibly hard to make the country function.
It's not a bad thing if we remind ourselves as a nation of the benefits of duty.
Yes, but we should mention that it has caused some controversy, the inclusion of NHS staff. There's been people who have been, asking the inevitable question of, well, if it is NHS staff that are being ordered, what about the other people that helped the country survive throughout the pandemic? Bin workers, checkout people on the checkouts.
I was just going to say bin men and women. I mean, they're the people. When they stop working, we've got a problem.
Yes, as we saw with the strikes in Edinburgh recently. But the other side of it is that this is something that's mentioned in the Telegraph, is that you have the NHS being venerated in relation to being present at the funeral proceedings, which I think most people don't have a problem with, because the health service worked so hard throughout the pandemic. But on the day, there are going to be mass cancellations of cancer appointments, of scans, of children's appointments. The councils are across the country shutting down. Funerals are going to be postponed, and so there's a kind of a cognitive dissonance there, which is okay. It's a bank holiday, and this is unexpected, and people want to pay their respects. But there is something of a problem of, as the Telegraph says, us grinding to a halt.
But how do you draw the line on that? Because if things carried on as normal, then there would be a lot of people saying, but I want to take this time to remember the Queen. So you can't, I mean, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
You're right, but I'm just sort of raising the thorny issue of, on the one hand, we are celebrating public duty. On the other hand, there is a kind of a question about deserting public duty at a time when, for example, we've had such a problem with cancer treatment that cancer appointments are being cancelled in the NHS. But actually, I don't think the blame for this, if there is any blame, should be laid at the door of the Royals. And in actual fact, the Telegraph makes an important point of saying that King Charles III says that he wants to see minimum disruption. So this isn't some kind of message that's come down from Buckingham Palace saying shut all the doors to the country in an act of respect. I think it's more of a kind of a lockdown hangover, which is that we have this tendency to, or we find it much more easy now to just shut things down, from the ridiculous like centre parks to the serious like council buildings, people having their appointments with plumbers being put off, people having their parents' funerals being put off. I think we have to sort of address that instinct in ourselves to be comfortable with shutting down society.
I think that's a valid point. Look, we're going to leave it there. Sorry to cut you off halfway through a word, Benjamin, Ella, thank you both very much indeed. We'll catch up with you. Oh, no, we won't. That's it, isn't it?
That's it for the moment.
Well, till next time. Till next time.